Hi there. Welcome to this mini-series on what works for women at work. I'm Evelyn Axelrod, and I'll be your guide on this exciting adventure. By day, I'm the VP of the Career Foundation, an innovative nonprofit organization driving inclusive employment across Canada. Personally, I'm interested in exploring a little more about what works for women like us so we can scale learnings and accelerate gender parity. I'm all about solutions, so join me on this year-long journey and get ready to hear inspiring stories, practical lessons, and powerful mindset shifts that will create leadership transformation. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to What Works for Women at Work today. I am so happy and thrilled to spend some time with my friend Carol Huynh. She is a brilliant leader and she is sharp and strategic in processes, but what I've observed is she manages people with such integrity and purpose. And that comes through really strongly in everything she does. Carol, welcome and thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Eve.
Carol, you and I go back now about 5 years ago, sort of.
Wow.
Yeah, time flies. Supporting each other in all kinds of different ways over the years. One of the really important moments I remember is during the pandemic. I was really anxious, like everybody, and I was sitting in my living room working on my a makeshift desk at the time, and I'm really worrying about what I was seeing on the news. Of course, people were so sick, and there were so many bad things happening. But because I work in employment, I was worried about, the number of marginalized people who were losing their jobs by the massive numbers. Women, disadvantaged folks from, economically challenged environments,
Yeah.
people of color, like just so many. And I was very anxious about that, dreaming up all kinds of ways I could make a difference. And I remember getting an email from you in the middle of a really stressful day and asking, what can I do to help you? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. This is exactly what we need people to stand up and do and be leaders in a time when there weren't many. And, and just ordinary people needed to stand up and do something together. And you did that. So
Oh.
thank you for that, Carol. Um, in the meantime, you were worried about the same things. Yeah.
Yep.
So can you tell me, like, what sort of pushed you into making that leadership decision to stand up and do something at that moment?
For sure. So for me personally, since high school, I've been touched by charities, whether they have benefited me or I have volunteered with them. So they've always had like a soft spot in my heart to like just do social good. But during my journey through university, I went to York University School of Business. So just like a typical bachelor's of business. It didn't really seem like a viable sector to really work in if I wanted to do something like consulting. So usually it's big commercial firms that we're working with for consulting. So I kind of put that to the side. I thought maybe I'll just volunteer on the side, and then do uh, my regular full-time job. But once I reached Accenture, that's when I saw that, and this is a lesson that I learned from you, Eve, that I've really taken to heart, which is that there are many goals that intersect between the private and public sector.
Mhm.
They're not always mutually exclusive. And that's where we can find social innovation. And it's once we had, that our relationship, these conversations, I was also able to connect it with Accenture's corporate citizenship group that has like a set of funding dedicated to pro bono projects to help initiate social innovation change. And so for me, that's when I feel like I finally found my sweet spot where I can do this amazing consulting work, and by that I mean, you know, take a problem such as this, how to help marginalized communities, which are so unfortunate because they're the last to get many jobs and yet one of the first to be let go during COVID. Like our research really showed this, which was unfortunate, but really showed our value proposition. So I really saw that this was an amazing opportunity for Accenture, being such a huge employer around the world globally and working with other major employers, that this is something that our companies want and need. We always talk about we want to be inclusive, but we don't necessarily know how. And I think, E, that was a lesson that you were gathering from the employees you work with as well.
Mhm.
So therefore, when you came, like Eve, you're being very humbled because you were the ones that envisioned such a solution, such as the inclusive job post tool. When that came up, I thought this was amazing. And I just saw myself as a foot soldier putting the pieces together and doing, some of the background research work to like build this tool so that it was smart, and that it worked, and to see it come to life alongside you was an amazing journey.
It really was. And it was a journey for me too, watching you in this space, bringing these experts to the table, the right experts at the right time, and leading them with a shared vision and purpose. And it was just so wonderful. And I learned so much about Accenture as
Yeah,
one of the number one, if not the number one, company in the world that champions diversity and
yeah.
inclusion. So tell us a little bit about your journey with them and you growing as a leader.
Yes. So I joined Accenture straight from university. So I was recruited in fourth year, and then I started as an analyst, and now I've been with Accenture for coming up to be 6 years. So I started as an analyst, I moved my way to a consultant, and now I'm a manager. So I would consider myself like a medium of the pack within the totem pole that is Accenture. So there's, for those who aren't familiar with professional services, the next level would be senior manager, and then finally you would be managing director. So I'm in a really great spot, in my opinion, where I get to work very closely with my analysts and my consultants, but I'm also like managing upwards, and I'm getting included in these conversations with the senior managers and the managing directors. So I'm in a great learning position. I'm part of the retail strategy consulting group, but as I had alluded to earlier, I really found my passion doing work with the Canada Corporate Citizenship Pro Bono team, where I got to work with many charities, and that's how I got to work with Eve on bringing social innovation ideas to life. And I'm happy to chat about a little bit more of those projects if we want a little bit later, but that's been my official journey through Accenture.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, through that journey, what have you learned in terms of, navigating the corporate world, the tangible things, intangible things, top three that you would say enabled your advancement?
Right. So the first one is the one that I find most people are surprised when they come into consulting, which is there was a joke that someone made, just like we have a job, but we're jobless because we're constantly seeking projects. Like
Mm,
once you work for a consulting firm, that doesn't mean you have a project or that you even have a brand. You have to find those opportunities yourself. So at Accenture, that's when it really, really made it clear how important this mentorship culture is. Because I mean, there's a joke. I'm sure you've heard it a bunch of times, Eve, but uh, it seems as though employers expect entry level jobs to already come with experience.
yes.
Kind of funny. Like there's one funny picture I saw. It was a dad working with his baby, saying, "Helping my baby gain 20 years of experience by the time she's 20," which I thought was hilarious. And it's a recurring joke because it's true. And through our research, we see that there are entry level jobs that require like experience that may not
Mhm.
necessarily be truly a requirement. And this is true also within the consulting world. If you want to work in a project, let's say in digital, they're going to look for people with experience in digital. But how do you get that when you're an analyst and you have no experience? This can apply for any topic. And the answer is mentorship and people that will vouch for you, because it is these mentors that open the doors for you.
Mhm.
This is how I got my first role as a manager, even. You can't get promoted into a manager until you've worked and performed as a manager so that Accenture knows that you're a good manager. But then how do I get that job if I am not yet a manager? It's because when you build great connections with people and you do strong work, you build that trust, they believe that you can take that next leap, and they're willing to take you under their wing and coach you through it, because you don't just become anything, whether that's a promotion title, a change in the type of functional experience you want. You can't just become that in a shift. You have to learn. There's going to be you're going to need feedback, you're going to need to grow. And it's with these mentors that help propel you to that next level with confidence as well. So I'm very, very thankful for the mentors that I've had here at Accenture. Um, and the second thing that is quite connected to this is that also to learn that mentorship is not a given. When you come to Accenture, you are, and any consulting firm, you always have a coach. And the reason why you have this coach is unlike in industry jobs, because we work with a varying amount of projects and clients, our managers can be shifting. So how do we evaluate people if I've had six managers, right? So you have one coach, and this coach helps talk to everyone, help coach you throughout your project. They're the one that sees your growth and they're dedicated to you. So some people, they think that this coach is the one that should be opening the doors for them. They should be the ones helping match you with jobs. They've been here longer. Should they be able to do that for you? But that's not their role. It's up to you to find these roles. So it's a double-edged sword in the sense that if you know what you want, you can aim for it. You can network your butt off, do whatever it takes to get in that space that you want to. That's what I did in that pro bono space because that's where I wanted to be. So I did my best starting with volunteering work, growing to even bringing ideas with the help of Eve to the pro bono community, and then the momentum builds. But others don't necessarily thrive in that environment because you can feel a lot like overwhelmed with the number of opportunities. You can also feel like a lack of support. Why aren't people helping give me my first few opportunities? You can feel demotivated because you don't get every opportunity you go for. So I think it's a double-edged sword in that sense, because if you know what you want and you aim for it, and if you also get lucky, right? Because not just hard work, it's also opportunity and luck, it can come together. But if you feel as though you'd rather, kind of get the projects coming to you, have a more stable job, then that's when people learn, okay, maybe consulting is a little bit too stressful for me. I'll do a little bit better working in industry in a dedicated function. So that's something second thing I learned, which is how the importance of mentorship, but how it's not necessarily a given and you have to find that yourself. And then the third thing I'm learning also as a leader is, I mean, everyone knows this, but I don't think necessarily everyone applies this, which is the importance of creating a feedback culture. So in a lot of corporations, when it comes to performance reviews, it's the managers reviewing the analysts. How many times are the folks below, whether you're a manager reporting to senior manager or an analyst reporting into a manager, are we giving upward feedback? And it is not like the current culture as is not necessarily does not enable this upward feedback culture, because imagine you're an analyst, you're trying to go for a promotion. The one that are recommending you for your promotion is your manager. Do you really want to give your manager critiques? The answer is most people don't. So they will hold their tongue and they won't say anything, just to kind of stay on their good graces and to, get that promotion that they're going for as well. So I think it really requires the leaders to set a culture of wanting feedback. And that's what I try to do with my teams as well. Like I'm always asking them for feedback. Hey, before, like I already wrote out your feedback. I'm not going to change, but I'd love to have an opportunity to hear from you. And I even bring up my own critiques, like here's what I'm working on. And I try to create a culture in which they feel open to sharing their feedback to me, both positive and negatives, for two reasons. The first one's obvious, try to help me find my blind spots, my weaknesses, and I want to genuinely work on them. The second thing is I also want to check that there are certain times where with certain people, I very intentionally am trying to change something. Maybe it's the way I describe an ambiguous task to them. Maybe it's the way that we even organize our tasks for the week based on their feedback to me. I want to see if it's working, because I could be putting a lot of effort in an area that's not working. So I want to hear from them what's working, what's not working, so I can keep adjusting my priorities and my approach. And lastly, also to just build a more genuine culture so that they know that I want to hear it. I also have feedback for you, and we're still friends at the end of the day. And we're going to do a great job. So those are the few things I learned. That's like a mixture of like culture mixed with like the practices and how like Accenture in the corporate world is built.
That is such That is such a powerful thing that's missing. It's a missing ingredient in how you support success on the team.
Hmm.
We used to talk about 360, but we're also talking about upward feedback, right? And it's really important. And I have to say, like in my observations, and this is yet to be determined factual or not, that kind of environment that you're creating tends to happen more organically with women leaders than unfortunately with men leaders, because we don't tend to come at it from ego based
Yes.
perspective. We're trying to create an environment that is nurturing everyone in terms of their growth,
Yeah.
creating psychological safety. So there's open and honest conversations. And we know that a problem is occurring before it actually slaps us in the face. So we
Yeah.
have this kind of honest, sort of collaborative process that we build with people. And I think that happens a lot, much more with women leaders than others, unfortunately. But it is something that I hope our male colleagues can learn from
Hmm.
women leaders and sort of bring those practices into their own leadership style. That's
Yeah.
great,
I've
Carol.
definitely observed that myself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said earlier when you were speaking about your role and where you're at in your sort of the structure of Accenture, is that you're in a great learning position. That really stood out to me because it's not like I have two more ranks to go. I'm in this sweet spot where I'm absorbing from my team that I'm supporting, but also from the leaders above me. And I'm
Yep.
just in this really like place where I'm a sponge and I'm taking it all in and I'm going to determine what I do with that next. So
Yep.
that's really, really great. And mentorship and coaching, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. But as you grow and responsibilities continue to be brought onto you, and life continues to happen,
Hmm.
other responsibilities in life continues to happen. We've seen a trend where women in the C-suite, and they're on their way there, tend to experience burnout.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you think workplaces can, so there's sort of three things, right?
Right.
One thing that you think workplaces can start doing or
Hmm.
do better,
Yep.
stop doing, or continue doing because it's working and we're seeing some progress in the
Right.
workplace to help women grow into leadership.
Right. No, I think this is a great question, and it's like a very popular topic amongst women at work groups, even amongst like my friends and I. So I think maybe even before the workplace, for me, it starts with the mindset, and then how does the workplace support?
Mm.
Um, if you don't mind me starting in that way,
Yeah.
Eve, because for me, like where I am right now in my life personally, I don't have kids. I have a dog, but that's very different. So my only dependent, if you will, is my dog. So in general, I feel quite supported. I don't feel like I'm less supported than my male counterparts at the moment. However, I got married last year. It is on my mind to think about family planning. And when I think about that, that's when I feel like my whole career is going to get derailed.
Mm.
There are studies that show that women, they succeed um, in their career better if they have their kids either very early on before they start their career. So, and then that way they maintain their momentum, or even have kids after they've reached like a pivotal milestone. For example, there are several people at Accenture who time it so that they fast track to become a managing director, then they have their children. But this doesn't always work, right? So the reason why I bring this up is because I find me personally, I feel as though one of the biggest barriers for women in leadership is closely connected to being a caregiver, because this is what is competing for your time, right? We at the end of the day we have 24 hours in a day, and we need to choose our priorities. So I think the most important thing, first of all, is your mindset, which is that, in my this is my opinion, that I don't think women can necessarily just simply have it all, not unless you have the right expectation of what all means
Mm.
to you, and also that you have the right support systems. I have so much empathy for people who don't necessarily have a support system around them, people taking care of you as if you wanted to be a parent, you as your caregiver, right? Like people who are single parent household or people who maybe are in the sandwich generation. They're not just taking care of their children, they're also taking care of their elderly parents. These people have a lot more responsibility on their plate before you even enter the workplace. So I think for me, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have lots of conversations with my partner as we future plan that we plan it together. Like our careers and our family aren't separate things. They come together and we're already having conversations about, okay, this is when I plan to lean in this area of my life. And this is when I need you to lean in if I want to achieve my goal. Are you okay with that? Does that also match your vision? And this was very important conversations for us. So now transitioning to the actual question, which is what can workplaces do to support? So I want to focus more on supporting women that also have these extra dependents, whether that's children or parents or other things in life pulling from their attention and their time. In my opinion, I think certain companies are doing a great job. Certain companies are reverting back. But what I think we need to do is we have to keep exploring how to negotiate a flexible work schedule and with clear communication. What I mean by that is we need flexibility to accommodate other things in life, whether that's to stay at home when you have a dependent that's sick, so you can kind of take care of them a little bit while still achieving your goals for the day. Or maybe sometimes you even want to, I know a couple leaders, they do once a week on this day, I want to pick up my child, even though it's at 3 p.m. In the middle of the day, and I want to come back and do work later. I think when these are taken away from folks by, for example, mandating that you have to be in office strictly within like certain periods of time every day, I think that is a huge deterrent for people. There's a lot of women that told me like, hey, if I'm being told I have to come back to the office, like, X number of days a week rigidly within these times, I'm going to say no, because at the end of the day, I want to prioritize, certain other things. Um, and when I say having conversations, though, the reason why I said that is because I think it's a two-way street. It's not just companies saying you can do whatever you want, come in only if you want. No, that's not my goal. Being in that middle of the pack, as we talked about, I see the priorities. Like it's really important that we prioritize our client meetings, that we're also there together as a team and really builds culture. I see the benefits. But what I mean by that is that we should be doing things with intention. We shouldn't be coming in just to FaceTime, which is a definition we use, which is when you come in and you're just working just to show your boss you're working. That's not productive. But when we come in, it should be intentional. Maybe we're having team meetings and that's the day we come in. Maybe we come in for days where we have our socials or something like that. But when needed, I hope that our companies can continue working with us to be flexible. And the last thing I wanted to say when it comes to flexible on that two-way street is I think it's important that we as women, that we are very, very clear and proactive in communicating our needs. Nothing should come up last minute, and nothing should also be unclear because it makes it easier for whoever you're working with to understand your schedule and work around it. So, for example, there have been times where I was working with someone that maybe I'm new to working with them and I don't know their schedules, but then they surprise me saying that, oh, they need a certain deadline that's earlier because they need to leave at 3. But that causes me stress because I thought end of day for me was 5, but for you, that's actually 2. So then that caused me a lot of stress. So I was like reprioritizing my day. And I think maybe it came from a part of like being nervous, not wanting to share, that they have certain boundaries. But if you don't share ahead, then that does cause like, some inefficiencies and some stress amongst the team. So I think it's really important that you communicate to the team so that we can organize. And then for the company, the workplace to actually accommodate and give them what they need.
Wow, lots of learning there. Proactively communicating your needs. Yeah, and also like really thinking on what is the definition of having it all. And
Mhm.
it's gonna vary from person to person based on their life situations and what they want. Yeah, no,
100%.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're coming down to the last question. And it does go back to mindset shifts, but maybe one specific lesson that you've learned that you think has been instrumental in making a shift in your leadership journey, something that clarified something for you.
Yeah.
Share with us one lesson that you'd like to leave us with.
One lesson that I learned recently, especially as a woman, in a middle of the pack leadership role, is to rethink what kindness looks like.
Mm.
Since I was a kid, and I feel as though this is quite common amongst women. I'm not saying, I'm not generalizing, but I am noticing typical correlation is that women, we want to be kind, we want to be nice. And what that typically looks like, at least to me, is that maybe we were a little bit more, like much more gentle, maybe even slightly demure. I'm not very demure myself. And when I said I was in a great learning position, this is where I realized that some of my ideals conflicted. What do I mean by that? So, for example, I wanted to always deliver A plus deliverables, never negotiate on that. And I also wanted my whole team to have amazing, great work-life balance. I would never expect my team to FaceTime or anything like that. But then I came to a conflict one time when we had a project that the scope of the project and based on the skill set of our team, uh, that wasn't working perfectly. If we wanted to deliver A plus, we needed to work extra. And being that middle manager, I am the one that essentially helps control that level, like whether I wanted to work a little bit less and maybe our A plus deliver goes to A minus, or maybe push the team to work hard so we maintain a certain standard. And then that's when my ideals of kindness was really like shown and on the table. Like, what is my part and what does kindness look like in this situation? Because it's not so crystal clear. So, for example, one part of kindness that I learned is regarding feedback. So, for example, kindness before, even as a kid, with little spats with my friends, we always, at least I personally, I tend to really sugarcoat my feedback because I want to share something that's a critique, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I sugarcoat. That's what I do. I do the sandwich approach, positive, small critique, and then positive again, So I try to keep the environment positive. But one thing I realized was for one particular person I was working with, it wasn't coming across how important that feedback was because that feedback to me was extremely critical. Had another manager experienced that, that would have been a big problem. But because I was over sugarcoating, I don't think they understood it, and that mistake was repeated. So I realized, like, hey, Carol, it's not kindness to try to not hurt their feelings now if they don't get the message. Because if they don't get the message and they repeat this mistake with the next manager, they might really come down on them really hard. And that's not kindness because that's not helping them learn. So I had to rethink, okay, what does kindness look like? Kindness is not how I am approaching it. Kindness is what I want for them, the intention I want. And what I want for them is to grow, but of course, not in a way that hurts them. So I had to come at the feedback again a lot clearer and like state things such as like, um, give them the feedback. And I always share also the benefit of doubt. Like, I know this happened. It's not because, you're dumb or something like that. This is like, common. It has to do in experience, but it's really important that this doesn't happen because of X, Y, Z. And then this is what I recommend for you, ABC, to address this so that it was a lot clearer that I expected work to be done, but in a way that, I still believed in them. So I think that was one thing, which was like rethinking what kindness looked like, because it felt wrong to me. It felt wrong to be so direct with critique personally. And then another way that the kindness came out is also in speaking up. Because a lot of times when we think kindness, maybe we want to like be really respectful of people's boundaries. So maybe in the beginning, I wasn't asking questions such as like, how did your compensation negotiation discussions go? Did you
Mm.
have this kind of conversation, that kind of conversation? And by not speaking up, we're not knowledge sharing. And when we don't knowledge share amongst each other, especially amongst women, we all lose, right? When we share, that's when we gain power to lift ourselves up and then also lift up others. So that was a huge learning of mine, especially when I had one critical discussion about renegotiating my compensation. When that happened, it opened my eyes. And the people I talked to starting off weren't women, if I'm being honest. They were men. I talked to them and I got inspiration like, you know what? I do know my worth and I should be fighting for my worth. I shouldn't just be approaching it with gentleness and like asking my superiors what they think. Like, no, I should also fight for what I think I deserve. And I got it. And that's when I realized like you need to speak up and also encourage others as well. Like, not necessarily just be quiet and let people do their own thing. Like, no, I realized that when people come to me, I really try to push them. And I've been happy to see some other success stories as well, people. And I think that's a different definition of kindness where, you know, it is a taboo, right? That I'm crossing. A lot of people, they don't like to talk about certain things. And maybe, and for some people, you should continue not to, of course, read the room, talk to them and see what they want, but be willing to also help change that taboo yourself if you don't believe in it. And I think that is true kindness because in the end, that will help us women raise other women.
Wow. Wow, there's so much in there. There's so much in there, Carol. And I've always said Claire is kind. Claire is
Mm-hmm.
kind. And it's that was one of my pivots. And I too, I try to be kind to people and sweet to people, but that's not very helpful all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it brings me to another thing that we can talk, I know I can talk about all day, is accountability is not a four-letter word. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, accountability is helping people to grow and
Right.
and providing feedback to them in a way that helps them to stay on the path to make them successful, especially if you're a leader. It's our responsibility to help them grow. So I love that your learning around clarity is that kindness, and we need to sort of challenge our vision, our understanding of traditional kindness for women.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
that's such a great way to phrase it, Eve, and I completely agree.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. We've learned so much from you already, Carol. I think we need to have more conversations. This is exciting. And I think women will, when they're listening to us, there are certain nuggets that they'll walk away with that will make really important changes in how they're experiencing leadership and how they look at it as well. So thank you for sharing your journey and identifying some important tips, but also some important shifts that we can make when we grow in our leadership. So everyone, thank you so much for checking out our discussion today on what works for women at work. More learnings to come. And I will see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much, Eve. I just wanted to say, I really appreciate you have like hosting these forums to have these conversations, because I think it's so important that we learn from each other. I'm so grateful for the people that I learned with, and you can't necessarily gain these learnings in your own
Yeah,
company where people feel maybe partially censored or whatnot. So I think these are such unique and necessary forums that we can share like honest struggles, honest learnings to help each other learn and grow. So thank you, Eve, for having me today.
it is my pleasure, and we'll continue to do that learning together. Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for checking out our discussion today. Keep prioritizing and investing in yourself. Check out the resources below and join the conversation.